School Director at Selwyn House, and recently retired head of Trafalgar School for Girls, to introduce this year's Spears Medal recipient. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Geoffrey Dowd.
Headmaster, Mr. Shannon, Mr. Paletti, ladies and gentlemen, I've been called out of the wilderness of retirement to speak briefly this evening about Pat Shannon. Why? Should you even know me, you may be unaware of my long acquaintance and occasional friendship with tonight's honoree. While other potential speakers may know him better, I suspect they all refused. I was pleased to accept the honor of introducing my former colleague Pat Shannon and outlining his career and accomplishments here. His entire career dedicated to Selwyn House and its students until his retirement this past summer. Pat had been hired in my place during my sabbatical year in 1984, and in returning to Selwyn in 1985, a significant year marking the beginning of Bill Mitchell's excellent leadership here, Rob Waring's 40th birthday, and my first date with my future wife, Kathy, I came to share an office in the newly acquired and renovated Macaulay building with Pat and the legendary Byron Harker, among others, for several years. To summarize vaguely, I knew Pat before the civilizing influence of his future wife, the candescent Paula, brought focus, purpose, and stability to his life, rescuing him from the truly impressive squalor of his bachelorhood. We taught the same grades and so shared resources, swapped stories about amusing classroom moments, and tirelessly adapted Shakespearean text and insults to our banter, undoubtedly trying the patience of our higher-minded colleague Byron, among others. In 1991, after I moved to the elementary school and later decamped for Trafalgar in 1994, I enjoyed seeing him flourish as a teacher, advisor, and father. Distance obscures truth, of course, but whatever. Pat is noteworthy for his detached, cool, mordant wit and his habit of observing the excellent foppery of the world, including his own. One had to assume the tweedy coats and leather elbow patches were products of rewatching John Houseman in The Paper Chase and his brief stint at McGill's Law School. But there's no explaining the banjo, his musical weapon of choice, on which he learned to play well enough to solo in Selwyn's H2O band, H2O, Hannaford and Others, a deservedly obscure group, typically featuring Hal Hannaford on drums and no one else. While Pat's eccentricity is noteworthy, why is this man being honored today with the Spears Medal? Pat is a man of many parts, though one given to compartmentalizing his life. I will briefly attempt to cast light into some of these corners. Pat always made his teaching look easy, despite the hard work and time he put in when no one was looking, to create interesting lessons and assignments. He was from the start an English teacher dedicated to encouraging a love of literature in his students, an appreciation for the Shakespearean turns of phrase, a love of the offbeat or absurd, and the ability to write authentically and well. Shakespeare plays were of particular interest to him, but Pat was Catholic in his tastes and enthusiasms despite his Jesuit training. True to his Irish roots, Pat can be maudlin in his enthusiasms, which helps explain his curious passion for the works of John Cheever, his inclusion of John Knowles' A Separate Piece on the course of study, and his growing fascination with King Lear, also a father of three, who makes some decisive mistakes around the time of his retirement. Pat has been heard to mutter to no one in particular, "Where's my fool? I have not seen him." Sorry. Pat helped introduce the Harkness table and method to the school as a means of promoting open dialogue and Socratic discussion of ideas. Pat was unusual in his style of providing feedback on written work or tests. For example, marginal feedback for a well-turned phrase or a good idea might earn a quotation from a Spinal Tap song or some Shannon-esque cartoon. Alternatively, bad or lazy work might earn a picture of a steaming heap of dung. Pungent teacher feedback offered in perhaps less politically correct times. His marking system was also idiosyncratic. He sometimes awarded students exotic marks such as 29 divided by pi, or arbitrarily deducted a mark because the student was not his own son. These occasional oddities aside, Pat's written feedback to students was remarkably thorough and extensive, often longer and more detailed than some students might have warranted. But his serious and/or talented students learned from his useful analysis, criticisms, and praise. In the pre-digital days when report cards were handwritten on forms shared by multiple teachers, Pat would write lengthy paragraphs, even mini essays, in outlining the terms achievements of his students. English teachers tend to like using words anyway, but Pat's style and turn of phrase were uniquely his and made for good reading. It's difficult to measure a teacher's influence, but the feedback I've had recently from several of Pat's past students has been uniformly enthusiastic about his impact on their way of writing, reading, and thinking. Pat was also deeply involved in the school's athletics program. As honorary captain and spiritual father of the school's leisure program, he led by his insouciant, easygoing example, later on extended by disciple Marty Boyle. In his role as golf instructor, Tin Cup Shannon was an exemplar of the fluid swing. As a reportedly very good hockey coach, he brought his own relevant experience as a McGill varsity player to his work with many Griffin teams over the years, even winning a few games. I'm told that the Flying Father, as he was nicknamed at McGill, was known for his impressively fluid skating style, which often daunted opposing teams during the warm-up, if not always during the game. It's not easy for a teacher and his children to be in the same school or even occasionally in the same classroom. Unusually, Pat's 3 sons all managed to survive the experience without undue scarring, a testament to their own abilities as students, to their genetic inheritance from their mother, to Pat's even-handedness, and to the general perception that Pat, despite being James, Connor, and Liam's dad, was a sort of cool guy, even with the banjo. One son reports that when he and some friends established an unauthorized lounging space in an off-season equipment storage room, they nicknamed this hidden space Pat Shannon's office. There are code words for this chill space in honor of a chill guy. To paraphrase Willie Loman, Pat was liked, but not well liked. As the school's post-secondary advisor for over 20 years, he succeeded in another role in which he did excellent work with little fanfare, helping find happy academic perches for all Selwyn boys, whether they were the Halton Lane or the academic stars. He understood the CEGEP application game well, including the arcana of the R-score system, and was helpful in guiding many students and parents toward programs and schools well suited to each, sometimes in spite of the overreaching of some ambitious parents. He applied his writing skills to composing exceptional letters of recommendation, to which Charles alluded earlier, by the way, for students looking to attend prep schools or U.S. colleges, as well as schools on the north side of a currently unwalled American border. Happy Thanksgiving. In latter years, channeling his inner King Lear, Pat relocated his actual office space to a remote upper corner of the Macaulay building, where he plied his trade as a teacher and advisor. This secluded perch allowed for easy access to his classroom, as well as to the back stairway to the parking lot, thereby facilitating quick trips to Second Cup, a timely nap when his classroom couch was in use, or Lamont's start early getaway into a Friday evening home game at Exeter. Pat's being awarded the Spears Medal was a pleasant, almost embarrassing surprise to him, given that there are others who've also made valuable and long-term contributions to the school and its students. This self-effacing modesty may seem surprising to those who don't know Pat, who can appear distant and at times remote, but that's just because he may have a little touch of the poet. Pat, he's an unusual person, but one whose commitment and positive influence have had lasting impact on literally generations of Selwyn boys. His odd amalgam of knowledge, unconventional style, sly wit, hard work, and intellectual range, applied subtly yet powerfully over 34 years here, is indeed a rare accomplishment. Pat this evening joins the list of other distinguished faculty members and Selwyn volunteer builders who have previously received this high honor. Congratulations, Pat.